Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the end of our revival review that we're super fucking late on. My name is HSR.
My name is Chris Chrome.
And I am Prophetry Hip Hop. What's up?
So, basically what happened is we did the review. It was super long. We had some tech issues in the last 20 or so minutes of footage talking about the end of the album. That would be Castle, Arose, and our little summary. There was, happily enough, some requests to have us finish this, so here we are. We're just going to do that little part plus a little bonus surprise, and that's about it. So since we've already done our whole intro to the album, you can click in the corner to check out the revival review that we did. And yeah, so do you guys want to just jump in and get this done?
Yeah, let's just do this.
So we will start with the classic banger to some and maybe not most of you, Castle. So we weren't actually gonna read a comment for this video, but as we were just taking some time to refresh ourselves with Castle, Louis D95 popped up and said, "Are you gonna finish your review of Revival? Want to hear your thoughts on Arose and the grade. Keep up the good work." Just to show you I wasn't full of shit, and there were literally people asking us to finish this, so that was surprisingly fun and good timing, and that was cool. Anyway,
Nice.
let's talk about Castle. Chris, why don't you start us off?
Okay, so the song Castle is basically Eminem's apology letter to Haley. And the way I interpret it was he's kind of taken all the apology letters while he was touring and he was away from her. And he summed it up all into one song, Castle. Now, throughout the song, you can hear a lot of pain in his voice, a lot of struggling, a lot of like clenching. There is he kind of running out of things to say. And the song is mostly about, again, like I said, apologizing to her for putting her in this what he feels this life that Haley may or may not have wanted. And I think that as he's gotten older, matured, whatever you want to call it, he's starting to realize what putting Haley's name in his songs has actually may have done now that he can see it. So that's what I'm going to start off with.
All right. So it's interesting because the song is comprised of several letters, as Chris described, and each one is time-stamped. They're all taking place around Christmas time, and there's three of them. So the first one is pre-Haley's birth, and he's kind of like, it's like pre-infinite at the same time, right? And he's got like this whole thing, and he's talking about this, like, if I can find this passion, this joy, you know, the way I'm describing my feelings towards you, maybe I'm gonna write this great album and it's gonna change some shit. He's got lyrics like, if I use the same energy while I'm saying rhymes and write them with the same passion and the same exact enthusiasm as I'm using in this letter, maybe they can feel me. I'm trying to build these castles out of sand, baby girl. And it's really cool. Like, and then the chorus comes in and it's kind of got that, like, I built these castles, but ever sit on the throne, etc., whatever. Then, as everybody knows in the story of Eminem, infinite flops, and he's in a worse state of mind, as is reflected in that second letter, which honestly, it feels like rock bottom, but like in one compact little verse. It's the same desperation, the same feeling, and it kind of places it right before the Slim Shady LP blows up and changes his freaking life, right? Goes through that whole verse, and it's kind of interesting to see it. It's deep introspective and whatever. And the whole thing is kind of commentating on, like, how his love for her and his personality and how he's dealing with it is a central force and what's going to drive him. Then we jump ahead to 2007, where he is clearly going through the worst parts of his life at this point, and he's kind of like, wow, this gap has happened, so much is going on. He's very frustrated by the impact of using Haley in his rhymes, how he's almost apologizing, like, I tried to keep you out of it, but unfortunately, you know.
Well, I don't think it's keep her out of it. I think what I got from it was he tried to give her something what he didn't have, and not knowingly he may have fucked that up.
Well, he says, if I'm not mistaken, And I tried to keep your face out of it, but I didn't know the impact of like saying your
Okay,
name a whole
yeah.
bunch of times.
If you're talking like physically and not trying to have her in the spotlight, I
'Cause
understand
I believe
that.
what's happening now is, in a very literal sense, she is dealing with the consequences of their
Yes.
public feuds and all this other stuff.
Mhm.
He's seen the impact it has on her, and it's whatever. And he's kind of like apologizing. And then around the end of the verse, what happens is you hear him opening up a pill bottle, and you hear him whatever. And he's kind of starting to get a little drowsy in his delivery, and he's
Well-
starting to get a little like, and if I don't make it out of it, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, okay.
And then he basically, it kind of alludes to him popping the pills. And then he collapses, and it flows right into the next track.
Well, before he collapses, I just want to say he also, the way he's writing the end of that verse, and he's still again apologizing to his daughter, but he kind of, by the end of the last verse, he kind of feels like there's really nothing left to say to her, so he just says fuck it. Like he was like, you know what, forget it. Like he's just repeating nice things, and he just gives up, and then he pops the pills, which
Yeah.
I think that acceptance of not knowing what else to say is it like that's painful. That is painful.
And it's like very much like he almost implies like Encore was an album that he like forced out of him, and he didn't even want to do it anymore, and he was tired, which it was so interesting. Like, having been someone who's grown up with Eminem and watched his career, hearing these tracks, this track, and I guess to me it's like they're the same song, the two of them. Hearing this part of it, you can't help but feel almost this sentimentality with knowing his story and remembering all of these things coming out, and at the same time hearing it now, all this time later, knowing what happened next. I don't know. And then the beat is really, really intense and beautiful to me. I gave this track a 5 for real. I know this part had been cut off where we actually gave grades to this, and I know the first part you can hear in the original video. But yeah, so I give this one a 5. I thought it was like remarkable. It is a true masterpiece in the same way Stan can capture your imagination and be a truly powerful, not to the exact same degree, but in the same like ballpark.
Well, and it even feels inspired by Stan, right? This idea of having a song built around writing letters, but he took that idea and he just put it in a different direction. But I think it's got a similar kind of emotional impact and feels remarkably mature for Eminem. This is like one of the places on the album where we really see adult Eminem kind of like showing us life through his eyes with increased wisdom from his youth. Yeah, it's a nice song. The structure of it's really interesting. How he kind of starts pre-Infinite and then goes to, I guess, like slightly before Relapse, right? And it even feels like this song ends kind of the way that Relapse could have ended with the death of Eminem. And I think that was intentional.
Just to interject, isn't one of the last tracks on Relapse the one where he's dealing with his like where he does have that crash and he dies basically in the song?
Yeah, I think you're referring. Oh man, that's the best song on the album, I think.
Oh no, it's not the last one, but it's close to the end. Sorry, go on.
What? Deja Vu? Is that the one?
Maybe.
Deja Vu is
Yeah.
like the song I remember from Relapse that I actually really like. Because that album is hit or miss for me for a lot of it. But that's a track I really like. And yeah, I think this is like quite a nice song. Like you've got kind of this rocky sound to it, but it's kind of like a soft rock, and it suits the tone pretty well as he's writing these letters to his daughter. I mean, one thing that we've seen is that Eminem really has used his daughter as kind of an emotional prop in his songs over the years, because I think he's tried to be really honest with his audience without really considering necessarily what effect it would have on his daughter, right? He's done the same thing to Kim, but there's a big difference because his daughter is was a small human when he started this, and she's spent her life growing up where everybody knows who her father is, right? And has very strong opinions one way or another about him, and knows about her through his music.
And if you really consider it, he only globally like super duper like next level popped at Eminem show with like tracks like Haley's song and stuff, right? So yes, he had blown up, but like we're talking next level blowing up is really after the Eminem show. And so after that, the impact of his daughter, like, and she would have been old enough then, and she was on the album with My Dad's Gone Crazy and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, Interesting point, Ryan, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I really like this approach to the album, and it's one of my favorite songs on the album because of the kind of emotional viewpoint that is very mature coming from Eminem. It's one of the things I really enjoyed about this album, where he jumps between songs, between being kind of the older versions of himself, multiple different older versions, and also this newer version. And this newer version of Eminem is one of my favorites because he's insightful and thoughtful in a way that I really think suits him. I gave this a 5 as well.
You?
I give it a 4.5 on 5. It's a great song. 5 on 5 means I'm going to go back to it multiple times.
I have. You don't have to. I'm just saying I have. Go on.
Well, that's it.
Okay, fine.
Like, that's it.
So it's almost impossible to talk about Castle, like we said, because the next track just arose and was seamlessly fluid. That was terrible. Hold it.
To Reba Dirt, Jay. Singers just heard say they're unplugging me, and it's your birthday.
Does anyone else remember Napoleon Dynamite and that classic scene where he's with, I think it's the Glee Club or whatever, and they're like, some say love it. Well, that's the song. That's the backdrop of this first part of Arose. So kudos, Eminem, for bringing me back to Napoleon Dynamite. That doesn't happen very often in 2017, 18, or whatever year it is. I really dig how it just transitions now, right? So in the story, we are now at the point where Eminem has overdosed.
Yep.
He's in the hospital.
Yep.
He is kind of like awake and alive, apparently a little bit conscious. He has no motor control. And this verse that we're hearing is what's going on in his head as he's trying to communicate to the people he can see standing around him. And we notice because you can hear in the background the beeping of the machine, and he's going like trying to like talk, but
the amount of distress and restraint that Eminem portrays on this song with the choking sounds and not being able to properly articulate some of the words purposely. This is all on purpose. Is very, very cool. Beyond creative to like you can really picture him standing in front of you actually choking, and I've never really been one to think Eminem would choke.
He's kind of like, I picture him lying in the hospital bed with like an IV in him, and the
right, like
talking,
the literal imagery of the song. Yeah,
he's like, because the whole thing is him talking, and it's like this realization that he almost died, and he like looks at Haley, and he's picturing stuff like missing her graduation, and things are finally going in a certain direction. How is he gonna miss it? He talks about Nathan, his like stepbrother, and he just talks to like freaking everybody around him. And honestly, it's lines like, and it's your birthday, Jade. I'm missing your birthday, baby girl. I'm sorry. I fucking hate when you hurt. Hey, and sweeties, thank you for waiting to open gifts. But girls, you can open them that ain't making it home for Christmas. Wish I had the strength to just blow a kiss. I go to make a fist, but I can't make one. I'm frozen stiff. And like, I just get chills when I hear those lines. Like, forget about if it's Eminem. It's just imagine you make that choice to pop a bunch of pills, and the next thing you know, you wake up in this moment where this is happening, and you're looking over at Haley or your family, and in any moment where you have to face that kind of regret, it's almost over. He thinks he's gonna die, and you can feel it in the way he's delivering it. I don't know, man. Then he like talks to Proof. He mentions stuff like he's apologizing. He's walking around the house, but seeing these pictures, and he pictures Proof's body, and then he's almost like he's trying to rationalize what happens, whatever. And then he decides this isn't how it's gonna be, and he rewinds the tape, and you hear and it goes back to the line where in the previous track, and this put out the last album, I'm done, fuck it. But then he like apologizes for cursing and kind of flips in to describe how things are going to be different and list all the albums he dropped since. And it ends on such a triumphant, proper note, because the subtlety at the end of this track is that you hear the pill bottle and things, but instead of ending up with him popping the pill bottles and whatever, it's him making the choice to flush the pills down the toilet, and the album ends on a flush. Which, coming from Eminem's story and everything, it's just powerful. Like, there's no way to approach these two last songs and not say this is the definite best closer Eminem has ever produced. on a fucking album, if you take into account the idea of a hip hop supposed to be personal and real, and him being a storyteller, him taking his story, his weakest, his most, let's say, be real, his most pathetic moment, and creating this almost 10-minute masterpiece out of these 2 tracks around it, I think it's again a 5 on 5 without a shadow of a doubt. Like I almost teared up the first time I heard this track. It was so enthralling. It was like you didn't even notice it was 2 songs. Like you just realized it when the second track ends, and you're like, oh, that's 2 separate songs. Like, you know, it is like, even if you fucking hate Revival and you're one of those people that are really not down for it, that's fine. But these 2 songs are a step almost above the rest of the album for their fucking brilliance, and it is not fair to, in my opinion, criticize these 2 tracks as though they're just another 2 songs on Revival. And it's a shame because many people may not have even gotten to them in their disdain for this album in light of how amazing they really are. Anyway.
Yeah, I think Holden's right in that. I mean, the thing is that, first of all, just the fact that he took these 2 songs, and it's basically like 1 song, but it's composed in such a way to kind of trick the audience and play with our emotions a little bit. It's very clever just from a song structure level. But then you bring in the fact that the songs are good, or the song, depending on how you want to look at it, they're good. But the narrative of it, that idea of, you know, this was like a possible path my life could have taken, and rewinding it is also very clever. Allows him to bring it back to the tone of the other song, and then you kind of realize when you're listening to it that it's like, you know, when he gets back into the part 2 of Castle, he's like, it starts with, I don't want it. I'll put out another last album, then I'm done with it. 100% finished, fed up with it. I'm hanging it up, fuck it. You know, he's not referring to Revival. He's referring to Relapse, because this is all going back to that period of time. It's an alternate ending to that. And he kind of has another line that's quite clever towards the end there, too, where he says, you know, all that old pathetic loathing, closing credits can roll. I'm proud to be back. I'm about to, like a rematch, outdo Relapse with Recovery, Mathers LP. Help propel me to Victory Laps. So he says Victory Laps, but Victory Laps is a homophone with Victor space Relapse, right? So he's back to being a victor again after falling off, which is like a pretty clever pun that he like slid in and kind of hidden there.
The album's full of those people.
It's great. It's emotional. It's crafty. It's artistic. This is like the version of Eminem that I really do wish that we had seen pretty consistently through this new album. You know, maybe not like the whole thing, but like for the most part, if we had had all of the songs be similar to these 2, I really do think that this would have been one of his best albums.
Fair. Would you give it?
I give it a 5.
You?
Give it a 4.5 on 5.
Anything more to contribute, sir?
Well, as I remember from re-listening to the album, there's a lot of parts in this album that fills in a lot of gaps, especially with Castle filling in a lot of gaps that we didn't get from Haley's, like Eminem's story to Haley, throughout the other albums. So with the whole rewinding of the track and flipping the end scenario of when he pops the pills on Castle, or at least from what Ryan was saying from Relapse, it's pretty interesting how he decided to use his already made accomplishments to prove to himself that he could have still done it. So,
all right. So now we are going to wrap up and pretend like we just talked about this Eminem album for 3 hours like we did the other time. So I'm gonna give my album grade, and I was kind of sad I didn't get to give it. Officially, this actually ranks, of every album I've ever reviewed, is the highest on a metric front at 4.802. Second place is Nazomatic at 4.8. So they're basically the same grade, but there's a 0.2 difference between them. I really like this album. And I say that having gone back to it multiple times since that last review. I can put on many of these songs as individual tracks and find them enjoyable. I put the album on as a whole, and it's really solid. I admit that there are a couple of flaws, and it might seem like it's kind of like a very high grade. but I don't hate Rick Rubin's beats as much as I find them all kind of similar. So my low points came from Rick Rubin's beats, and I'm okay with what is it? Sasha Grey? Not Sasha Grey. Fuck.
Skylar Grey.
Skylar Grey. Wow. So Skylar Grey's choruses are okay. They're if you're in the mood for them, they're exactly what you want. And I don't feel like any song on this album was a miss. I feel like there's a few preference choices. You might not like the beats. It might not be what you wanted out of the Eminem album. But as a guy who likes to write songs, I feel like there's a lot for me to go back to and study in the way I would read a book or something that I don't get out of many other albums. And for that, it's truly remarkable. I feel like I can only level up appreciating this album. And maybe that's just my point of view, and you don't have to agree with me. That's totally fine. But I was blown away by the quality of writing on this album, and to me, it's the most important part. So, anyway.
Nice. I give this album a 4.13. I really like the maturity. I really like how Eminem is giving us the more adult side to things. He took a more of an honest approach on this album. He wanted to explain that he's got certain views and certain messages that he wanted to bring out. And I think that when you're going through this album, you have to also understand that he's not young anymore. He's not, he's not immature anymore.
He's not as angry either is something he said.
Yeah,
There we go. He's also not as angry. So there's a lot more of passion in terms of realness and sadness that's here on this album that you don't usually get from the other ones. So really great album for me.
And you, Mr. Prophetry?
Well, before I give mine, I'm just curious about one thing. You said this is your second highest.
No, this was the highest, actually.
Highest. Okay.
This is just off of the math. It does. Okay, look. How I grade the songs and whether or not they're good, it's pretty. Sometimes it's kind of arbitrary. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. But when I ran my numbers on enjoyability of each song, and I ran the grade and I ran my average, it worked out at one of the highest grade I've technically ever given on this channel.
So just out of curiosity, because I know you also really liked the Yellow Wolf album this year, right? Where does that?
So this is cool because for my top list that I did, right, I ranked the Yellow Wolf higher in terms of I enjoy the album more and it's more pleasurable for me to listen to. But when I think about this Eminem album, I'm looking at it more like this is one of the most brilliant projects I've come across. So it's like watching a high-end, really well-filmed, one of those crazy, like, the director does all the crazy shit movies versus watching, like, Superbad. In terms of, they're both enjoyable in very different ways kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Yellow Wolf album was more impressive on an instrumentation point of view, and it was the beat selection and diversity that was more impressive to me. But as a rapper, let's be real, Eminem outperformed Yellow Wolf in terms of being a dope rapper and putting together a more solid album as a project, even if not every beat's my favorite and everything else. So I feel like from an admiration point of view, I respect what Eminem did a little bit more than what Yellow Wolf did in terms of talent, showcasing it. Like, I think Eminem dropped some of the craziest flows on this album, some of the craziest writing on this album. He made some of the silliest songs on this album. Like, I fucking love Offended still to this day. It's really fucking great. And just what he showcased was like, it just kept blowing me in mind. Every time I go back to this album, I hear a new line and appreciate it in a new way that I didn't. Yellow Wolf's album has a few songs I'm not as big on compared to like that. Like, there's a couple of tracks where like, okay, they're nice. Like, Violin's lovely, but it isn't my favorite. So I enjoy like stuff like Punk and Row Your Boat and shit like that. Like, next level, love him. But Eminem's album to me is more like a masterpiece of art, whereas Yellow Wolf's album is more an album tailored to my musical tastes, is I guess another way to look at it. But I do admire Revival, and I think it rivals any of his other greatest albums, and even the ones that I like better than this, because it's not my favorite Eminem album. But I think a lot of it's nostalgia versus being able to appreciate it. As a 30-year-old, I like Revival more. As a 20-year-old, I like, the Slim Shady LP and MMLP more.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, that was a lot more than I thought I would say. Sorry.
No, it's all good. I asked the question. I have pretty mixed feelings about this album, and it's very strange, too, that we come back to re-record it like this, because to give you guys context, we're like a month after we originally recorded the album. So in that month time,
Album review.
yeah, no, we recorded it. You guys didn't know that we're Eminem? The three of us together, we're Eminem. Yeah, it's out. Secret's out. Everyone knows now.
It's over. It's gone.
I'm a skinny guy with blonde hair.
If you combine the three of us, you get exactly what Eminem looks like. Just think about it. Someone run like an algorithm.
He's got the eyes.
But anyway, yeah. We recorded this a while ago, and it's a strange thing to be doing this now, right? Because for the last two tracks, I've been a little bit skating. I don't fully remember all of the detailed notes that I had, so I'm only going based off what I remember and what I can like see now. And then for this review, like I think I originally gave it like a 4.4. In the moment, you know, I had heard it a couple of times, maybe 3 times, and I remember being like pretty hyped on it, but I also had some misgivings about it. And then, you know, the thing that really stands out to me now, a month later, is that I haven't gone back and listened to it, which is to say that I listened to it when I needed to listen to it for the review, but nothing really popped enough to make me be like, man, I gotta go back and hear that again. So now I have like this kind of inner conflict where I'm saying to myself, like, I don't know if I can give it that same review I would have originally given it if now I have more context, and the context is that I've not been really driven by it. I think that there's a lot on this album to like and respect. I am not critical of Eminem for going down the route that some people on the internet seem to be bothered by, the fact that a lot of this stuff is more poppy. He brought in Ed Sheeran. I don't have an issue with that. There's a lot of songs on this album I really did enjoy. And I really think that his writing is often very, very good on this. At the same time, you know, there's the production on it I'm very hit or miss on. I also feel like the album is occasionally like really well crafted to have like chunks of the album where there's like a concept that's explored in this chunk, or you know, he'll like leave and come back to it. But at the same time, I get this impression that some of the album has this like lack of consistent focus and this attempt to try to appeal to everyone. Like I felt when I was listening to it, like Eminem's trying to appeal to, you know, the people who like Slim Shady, the people who liked Relapse Eminem, the people like you can find like a song, at least one song that feels like it could have been on one of his old past albums for all of his old past works to a certain degree. And I think to me that showcases that Eminem is trying really hard to appeal to everyone, but I think in the process he kind of misses an opportunity to make something that's specifically tailored to anyone. You know, like I find it really interesting because Holden really likes this album, and to be fair, Holden has listened to this album more than I have, so he may have, you know, a deeper sense of it than I do. That being said, you know, I also haven't heard many other people who have done that, and it could be, and I think people on the internet have been unfair with this album. I don't think this is a bad album. I do think this is an album that would have benefited from more focus.
Just one quick note on the album's numbers and performance. Around the world, the album sold way better than it did in Trump-filled USA, where Eminem's largest fan base was Trump supporters.
Interesting.
Just throwing it out there because numbers don't lie and shit. So I believe it hit number 1 in UK, and it just did it in USA. And what's the huge difference? His fan base and their support of the guy that Eminem turned on. So for what anyone else wants to say, he definitely didn't try to sell out. He clearly knew he was alienating his fan base when he went at it the way he did.
Yeah, that's true,
and he knew it was going to hit him in the dollars. And I want to give Eminem his props because he knew that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And he did it anyway.
Yes.
So to me, admirable.
I very much like Eminem. I respect the shit out of Eminem. I mean, Eminem is one of the main forces that inspired me to want to start to rap in the first place.
May I counter myself with one point?
Sure.
It's really cheap that he wasted the Trump opportunity by trying to bait Trump to respond so much, and it really devalued what he did. It made it less about being a political statement and more about a publicity stunt. And for that, it's kind of sad. And if I were to go back, in all fairness, I'd rate Unbelievable or whatever that track is. Untouchable is way lower. It is the one song on the album that every time I hear it, it puts a worse feeling in me. And it was something, I don't remember who said it. It was Lord Jamar on Vlad TV, and he said that this song, if you are a white supremacist or you are a whatever, all you're hearing is that hook. You're not really listening to the verse, and all you're hearing is white boy, you're a rock star, white boy, you're untouchable. and you're not really listening to the verses and shit. And there is something to be said about the miss that happened, and I'm gonna say that it's still a well-composed song, but it's worth criticizing my other end of it, not just showering it with praises. Anyway, we should let Chris say something.
Oh,
I've
he's
already
said
explained
his
my
piece.
album thing.
Yeah,
You already said
but
your album
Yeah,
grade? Oh,
Ron
shit.
Ryan, dude.
Just to
Oh,
just to
man.
finish
I've
my
already
Sorry
given
about
my
that.
grade too.
I was like, Chris hasn't talked in like 10 minutes.
No, y'all have talking for 20.
just to finish my
Sorry about
my
that.
point.
Rude Holden.
I think that I'd give the album a lower grade now. It would still be above a 4. I don't really have a specific number, and I don't think it would be fair to, because I haven't listened to the album in a month. So aside from like specific songs that we're reviewing, so yeah, that's kind of where I stand on it. I think it's really interesting. There's like pieces here that I see where it's like I'm very hopeful that, you know, the Eminem we saw in the last 2 tracks, I really want to see like a full album of that Eminem. I want to see like thoughtful Marshall being like a grown up. Like he could change his name and not even be Eminem. Like make an album as just Marshall, you know?
Quick question to the audience. Do you guys think that if you don't listen to an album a month later than it drops, if you were to give it your own grade, would you change your grade after if somebody asked you?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I will interject with my belief on that, which is I think that people need to understand online that when we give these grades, they're so subjective. It's like, how do we feel in the moment that we like it? And who here has had an album that they liked their entire life, right? Over time, you like things more or less. Your feelings change. Your experiences change. So, like, I don't think, you know, an album grade isn't more than a reflection of how someone feels in the current moment right now.
Well,
Yo,
just to bring it another type of perspective, what about an album you can't relate to? Like a lot of albums out there, you know, where they're like selling drugs or they're like riding around like towns, and I've like I don't come from that life, but I still enjoy the music. I still enjoy all that, but I'm not gonna listen to that like, let's say 2 months ago. I don't think I would change my grade at that time. It's like I can still appreciate it for what it is.
I don't think that the subject matter and relatability of the album necessarily makes a difference in this conversation. If the issue is you gave it a grade for whatever reasons you gave it the grade when you did your review. Now, if at that point especially for you, a lot of your commenting is almost specifically based on if you would go back to the song again.
Right.
So if you gave a song a 5, like I'm gonna totally go back to that song again, then it would be like another way. If you actually never do, does it still get a 5? That would be a fairer way to approach, I think, this conversation, as opposed to cutting on subject matter, just keeping it relative to the scores you gave it.
If I had to answer that, I would say yes, in my own opinion. I might not, and to defend myself, it's not because I haven't listened to the song in 3 months, but when I do listen to it 3 months later, I'm still gonna have that same feel that I would the first time.
Well, see, that's the thing, is you can't necessarily make that claim. And what I would like to just throw in before we kind of tangented a bit, but I think that if you're being an honest reviewer, it's impossible to do this without acknowledging that how tired you are, how happy or sad you are. All of this impacts your review.
Yes.
Right.
So sometimes I might be in a pissy mood, and it impacts every review I do that weekend, and I get called an asshole a bunch. Sometimes I'm like well rested and in a great mood and everything I fucking love and shit. So I know how much that my emotional state impacts my review. And for me, it's like maybe sometimes you think something's a banger because it has the new car smell, and then later on you realize it was just new car.
Right.
If you're an honest reviewer, you should probably be a little bit fickle over time and honest with yourself. If the song retains the shininess, that's amazing. Then that song justified the grade. Some of these albums I rated fucking high when I started doing the reviews. I had no idea what the fuck I was talking about. There's no way I can stand by grades I gave in January of last year. I was shitty at this. I'm still probably shitty at this. 2020 Holden's going to be like, oh, you give a 4.8 to Revival? What a fool. That's probably might even happen too, because I'm going to get called on that maybe one day. Look. Anyway, I think it's an interesting question, though, and most importantly, you should answer it. But I think we should migrate and move on to the last thing we're going to talk about, because Eminem handed us a gift and responded and showed maybe something he might do next with the Chloraseptic remix.
Magic words, a last resort. Something's gotta give, that's for sure. yet you keep coming back for more.
So here's a little story, and I might be a little wrong on the details, but goodness gracious, have I been getting into the world of hip-hop YouTube commentaries and watching guys like Blackie Speaks and Joel Budden and shit, so it's been fun. 2 Chainz sends a post on either Instagram or Twitter, like, basically whining about how he got cut off the album, because we've all known forever 2 Chainz was supposed to be on this track. Then he deletes it. In my head, I'm going, M hollered at him. And apparently, according to Budden, M is just the kind of guy that would just forget to tell you that he's not putting you on his album, and it's nothing personal. He's just that kind of guy. He just forgot. So then he's like, ah, shit. And then all of a sudden, we get this remix. And this remix starts off with 2 Chainz. Classic. And then it comes in, and I'm so happy 2 Chainz' verse got cut off the final version of Revival because it did not fit this album. It is good. It is a good 2 Chainz verse. But it is a good 2 Chainz verse.
Yo, it's not just a good 2 Chainz verse. It's the best 2 Chainz verse I've heard. And I'm not like an expert on 2 Chainz, but I've heard a good chunk of his songs.
I don't know if I would even agree with you because
I don't think so.
Apparently the album he dropped earlier this year was next level
Pretty
in terms
Girls
of
Love Trap
lyricism.
Music.
And
Okay, well, I haven't heard that
it's
album.
worth evaluating that album and taking a look at it before making that statement, but I felt it was on par with a lot of what I've heard from 2 Chainz, which is clever lyrics, but really from a content perspective, not necessarily my favorite. So he comes in and it's a lot of the same kind of stuff, but it works. He fits the beat nicely. I don't want to criticize that too much. Then Phresher comes in and does everybody's favorite hook. At least it's one of my favorites. I'm at your throat like Chloraseptic. Septic. I fucking love it. I don't care what anyone says. Chloraseptic is now one of my favorite songs off of Revival, so I was feeling the idea of the remix. Then Phresher comes in, and considering how smooth he is on the hook, I wasn't expecting him to yell at me for that whole verse, but it sounded good. He's pretty solid. A lot of aggression, a lot of flows. Now, that's a little more what I was hoping out of 2 Chainz. So what Phresher did was I really enjoyed it. I even found the lyrics, wanna be in my shoes, you ain't paid no dues, real, you ain't break no rules, hell yeah, high school, ate your food, might dumb it down a little, but I ain't no fool, hell yeah. And it just shows that he's got like this like appreciation for the grind and stuff. Anyway, it stood out to me, it was enjoyable lyrics. But everybody knows we're all here for Shady. And then Eminem comes in, and at first I was like, I wonder, like, is this some like casual verse? Did Eminem really write a new verse? Oh, he did. Eminem wrote a new verse for us. Eminem criticized us, well, not us, but other versions of us. I don't think he criticized me. He maybe criticized a lot of other people. Anyway, he comes in and he basically rips Rap God 2 and as far as the verse and the flow is concerned, and it's fucking fast. I saw a metric online, and it could be wrong, that if you were to take the average syllable count of this verse within the time frame and counter it against the fastest parts of Rap God, this clocks in at 6 syllables per whatever, and Rap God was 5.8. So this is actually more impressive than Rap God. Yay. And this is, I guess, what people wanted, because the internet fucking reacted. He comes in with like, I've been lauded, but they're him, and he comes in like that. What really like struck out to me is when he got to parts where like, not as raw as I was, walk on water sucks, bitch suck my dick. You also had a track list and had a fit for you heard it. He's right. If you did that, how? Anyway. So you formed your verdict. He's right. While you sat with your arms crossed, he's right. Did your little reaction videos and talked over the songs, chill. How you supposed to appreciate a song like that? Anyway, he's right, that's all I'm trying to say. I know I might sound a little obnoxious, but I don't hate what he's saying. Nah, dog, y'all saying I lost it, your fucking marbles are gone. Word, them. And then, I don't know. The rest of the verse kind of is a lot of just him flexing and doing a lot of what he does. But I highly admire the fact that Eminem went after the reaction so directly and responded in a... He basically pulled a brilliant chess move. He responded with the verse everyone wanted from Revival and attacked you in it. So I appreciate the move he did. I get his remix a 4.5 on 5. I find it enjoyable. It makes me chuckle a little bit. But it also makes me really appreciate that this was not... down to Eminem's verse was not on Revival, because that is not the Eminem that belonged on that album. And if that's what everyone wants out of Eminem, sure. But my least favorite Eminem is rage-filled, spewing nonsense Eminem. So I really hope he doesn't go in this direction, is all I'm trying to say.
I enjoyed it as well. I also gave it a 4.5. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I actually was surprised at how much I appreciated and enjoyed the 2 Chainz lines. He just the amount of fun he seemed to be having in it, and there wasn't anything crazy complex, but it was fun, silly wordplay. In a fruit fight, I aim at your Adam's apple, pull it up in the candy bar, eating a candy bar, or candy car, eating a candy bar, and my girl's eating a candy apple. He had a bunch of lines like that, and it was just pure silly fun, not to be taken too seriously. But I think that he was really trying his best, because when you're on right next to M on the track, you kind of have to, right? I think that most rappers would probably realize you got to bring your AAA game, or else you're gonna look like you got smoked next to one of the major artists.
And he did stand up next to Eminem. No disrespect to 2 Chainz, just in case people thought I was a hater. It's just he did a 2 Chainz verse on the song, and it was weird for me.
Yeah, I thought it was fun, and I really did dig having this version of Eminem a little bit, because it was kind of fun to have that. He's so good, and I think he's acknowledged that he's so good at the lashing back part of things. He's always been just him creating songs whenever he's had beefs in the past. Some of Eminem's strongest stuff is when he's responding to beef that he had. I don't know, have you guys ever heard the track Bully that was leaked, which was a Ja Rule diss track? It is super catchy, and he does that all the time. He always has, so it's cool to see he still got that, and I dug it. I had a lot of fun with it.
Nice. I like the beat is the same. It's great. Everything that Eminem and Phresher does is great. Phresher, my bad. But I don't like 2 Chainz's verse. I'm not saying he's not technically proficient. He's good. The rhyming is on point. The syllables are great. But I feel like 2 Chainz got butthurt, and then was just well, now that you're asking me for a verse, I'm going to do it because I can get views and I'm standing up next to you. But I don't feel like this was as great as people think 2 Chainz did it.
May I interject my thoughts on just what you just said?
Yes.
I think this was the original version of the song in terms of Phresher having a verse, and 2 Chainz's this was the verse. And then all that changed was Eminem recorded a new verse and flipped the beat up at the end.
If that is so, that sucks for 2 Chainz then. But well, I mean, let's say if Eminem changed his verse and his verse originally wasn't
all I'm gonna say is to get an official credit on Eminem's Spotify page, you're in a good position.
Fair enough. But needless to say, Eminem does. I like how he did go after the fact that everybody responded to the track list. That was actually really entertaining to me. How he had something to say about that. I didn't really think he gave a shit at first. But other than that, the song's not bad. I gave it a 4.5 on 5.
All right, so I guess that's the end of this little wrap-up video that turned out to be a lot longer than I imagined when we set out. We wanted it to be 20 minutes tops, but you know how we do. We're verbose motherfuckers. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts to this little portion. How you feel about Revival all this time later in the comments. You guys make the show. Quick plug for our contest, since I don't want to bring it up too much here. If you do, subscribe, like, and comment. You could win Amazon money and shit. Every video we've released around now breaks it down into detail. Check out the rest of the Revival review if you're into that. And we're going to head off and record our normally scheduled Headspace episode, which will have come out in real time before this video. So that's just how it goes. Bye.
Bye.